Of the Big Ten Conference, Tony Pettiti.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Lucas Oil Stadium for the 52nd Annual Big Ten Football Media Days presented by Old National Bank. Thank you to the Indiana Sports Corp, Jim Irsay and the Colts, and the City of Indianapolis for your incredible hospitality. In just over 4 months, nearly 70,000 fans will pack these seats for the Discover Big Ten Football Championship game, broadcast on CBS for the first time. I'm proud to announce today that Lucas Oil Stadium will be the home of the Big Ten Football Championship game for another 4 seasons through 2028. I'm also happy to be the first to share with you that the National Football Foundation will be presenting the John L. Toner Athletic Director of the Year Award to Ward Manuel from the University of Michigan. Congratulations, Ward, on this well-deserved recognition. Ward will also begin his term as the College Football Playoff Selection Committee Chair this season. We are now just 10 days away from welcoming our 4 new members to the Big Ten Conference: the University of Oregon, UCLA, USC, and the University of Washington. Before we look ahead, let's look back at a remarkable year from our more than 10,000 student athletes across 28 sports. Last year was an incredible year in women's sports, in large part because of what happened in the Big Ten. It began in August with Volleyball Day in Nebraska, where more than 92,000 fans, the largest crowd to ever gather for a women's sporting event, packed Memorial Stadium. Then in October, a women's college basketball attendance record was shattered when more than 55,000 Iowa fans filled Kinnick Stadium. Just 2 weeks later, Wisconsin and Minnesota met in the most viewed volleyball match in television history, only to see that number topped by Nebraska and Texas in December's NCAA championship. That match was played in front of the largest indoor crowd in college volleyball history. Iowa set records for the most watched women's basketball game ever on 7 different networks during the season. Their Elite Eight, Final Four, and national championship games each set new records for the most watched event in the sport's history. And the final against South Carolina was the most watched basketball game, men's or women's, college or pro, since 2019. You really can't tell the story of last year in sports without acknowledging the woman who now plays right here in Indianapolis. Caitlin Clark led the Hawkeyes to a title at a sold-out Big Ten women's basketball tournament and was a National Player of the Year in women's college basketball. In volleyball, Sarah Franklin from Wisconsin was named AVCA Player of the Year, and Izzy Skane from Northwestern earned her 2nd straight Player of the Year honor in college lacrosse. On the men's side, Purdue's Zach Edey gave the Big Ten a sweep of college basketball's Player of the Year awards, and Aaron Brooks is not only a 4-time national champion and U.S. Olympian, he was the 8th straight Big Ten wrestler to win the Hodge Trophy while leading Penn State to the NCAA championship. In all, Big Ten teams and student athletes won 20 individual national championships and 5 team titles during the year, including Michigan's college football playoff championship. In the classroom, the conference's 14 schools totaled 80 academic All-Americans and 5 NCAA Elite 90 honorees. The Big Ten Network, the first of its kind, set viewership records in basketball, volleyball, soccer, baseball, gymnastics, and cross country this past season. And our digital presence has been rebuilt and is growing, with more than 800 million impressions, twice as many engagements, and a 220% increase in video views over the last 12 months. Competitively, our student athletes continue to excel not only in college, but on professional and international stages as well. 141 Big Ten student athletes were selected in professional drafts, and we will have 116 United States Olympians, the most of any conference, in the Paris Summer Olympic Games, including 30 returning medalists. Every one of our 18 member institutions will be represented on Team USA, in addition to a huge presence on international rosters that brings the total number of Big Ten athletes in Paris to more than 325. On August 2nd, we officially welcomed the University of Oregon, UCLA, USC, and the University of Washington into the Big Ten Conference. These AAU member institutions are leaders in scholarship, innovation, scientific advancements, and athletic excellence. Together, they have won 302 NCAA team championships and will have 49 Olympians on Team USA in Paris. On the football field, they've combined for 10 Heisman trophies, 73 College Football Hall of Famers, 41 Rose Bowl championships, and 173 first-round NFL draft picks, including 6 just this year. Our staff is focused on working with all 4 institutions to ensure they hit the ground running this summer. This includes extensive collaboration with our coaching groups on scheduling and championship formats, marketing and branding alignment, and integration into the Big Ten Academic Alliance. They joined us during the most transformative period in college sports. Over the past year, the Big Ten continued its active engagement in helping chart a new path for college athletics, working with our chancellors, presidents, and administrators, and alongside our conference colleagues, we formalized expansion of the college football playoff. In May, we reached an initial agreement on an historic settlement that will allow student athletes to benefit from expanded scholarships and from institutionally provided financial benefits. Additional transparency into third-party NIL deals and market norms will help stabilize college athletics and protect student athletes. While significant strides have been made, there's still much to do. Changes to governance models and operational rules must be debated and implemented. State and local laws that create an uneven playing field still must be addressed. Litigation and administrative proceedings that seek to classify student athletes regardless of sport or school as employees. We continue to work with Congress and our colleagues to address these challenges, and we are optimistic that we will build on the momentum of the past year. The goal remains to provide Big Ten student athletes with a world-class education and the opportunity to compete at the highest level against the very best competition. Today, we're here at Lucas Oil Stadium to celebrate and prepare for the upcoming football season. College football has never been stronger, especially in the Big Ten Conference. Over the next 3 days, you'll have the opportunity to hear from our head coaches and 3 student athletes from each of our 18 schools. First, let's welcome our 7 new head coaches: Kurt Signetti of Indiana, Sharon Moore of Michigan, Jonathan Smith of Michigan State, Dan Lanning of Oregon, Deshaun Foster of UCLA, Lincoln Riley of USC, and Jed Fish of Washington. No sport is better at bringing people together than college football. During the 2023 season, our 18 member schools appeared in 51 games that had at least 70,000 people in attendance, including 20 that exceeded 100,000. Michigan's win over Ohio State was the most watched regular season college football game since 2011 and the 4th most watched since 1993. And Michigan's Rose Bowl victory was a top 10 cable telecast of all time, in front of the game's biggest crowd since 1998. This season will be our first with a full slate of games on 3 broadcast networks, along with cable and direct-to-consumer options, providing fans with the ability to watch Big Ten football in multiple ways. Last season, 44 of the 50 most-watched college football games were on over-the-air broadcast networks. This year, Big Ten teams will appear on broadcast networks more than 60 times, the most in college football. Fans will watch Big Ten football on Fox on Friday nights and Saturday at noon, on CBS at 3:30, and on NBC at 7:30, in addition to an array of games airing exclusively on the Big Ten Network, FS1, and Peacock. Our new lineup has more premier matchups week to week than ever before. Ohio State at Oregon, Penn State at USC, Washington at Iowa, and that's just on October 12th. All in addition to the Big Ten rivalries our fans have come to know and love. Our teams are battling for the right to return here on December 7th, the first time the number 1 and number 2 teams in the overall standings will square off for the Big Ten championship. The new, expanded college football playoff will give more Big Ten teams the opportunity to compete for a national championship. This season, we're excited to utilize technology to advance the sport of football. Over the last several years, the Big Ten Conference, steered by Vice President for Football Administration, A.J. Eads, has championed legislation permitting coach-to-player helmet communication and the use of sideline video by student athletes and coaches, both of which will be introduced this fall. This season, we're proud to partner with Apple. The iPad is the ideal solution for our coaches and student athletes to watch in-game video. We're excited to have both of these innovations on display here at Lucas Oil so our media, coaches, and players have the opportunity for a hands-on experience. Next month, we look forward to unveiling the Big Ten's new state-of-the-art centralized replay center. It is the most comprehensive of its kind, with 18 dedicated replay bays and 6 dedicated medical observation stations that will allow our staff to review plays while at the same time monitoring health and safety. Finally, thank you to our media, our fans, our coaches, and student athletes. The Big Ten Conference has never been stronger. I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you. Thanks.
Questions for Commissioner Pettiti?
Kyle Smedley with the Indy Star. You mentioned obviously the 4 expansion teams all on the West Coast, and now that the Big Ten is kind of all over the country, these athletes being students as well, how do you anticipate travel going as far as all the different games across the country? And if there are any issues with travel, is there any plans in place to kind of help them stay on track with school and things like that?
Thank you. So first, I think it's really important to understand that every sport is different. Every sport's got its own regular season format, its own postseason format within the Big Ten. So we start from that place, right? So the process of building the schedules is collaborative. It involves our faculty reps, our administrators, our coaches, all the way across, and ultimately going up to the top of our leadership at the presidential level. We've taken a lot of care to try to minimize travel where we can. I will tell you that we feel really good about where we've ended up across all of our sports. Having said that, I really believe that scheduling is something that has to be constantly evaluated by sport, and I anticipate that we'll get hopefully a lot more right these next couple of years with the way we've formatted and scheduled. But it's our responsibility and our job to listen to student athletes, to listen to coaches, to make sure that we're adjusting and making the changes we need. So while we feel really good about the work that we've done this past summer and that our team has led, I would anticipate that over time there will be changes. It just seems like it would be the natural progression.
Kenneth Berry.
I'm trying to see where you are. There you are. Okay, good.
Kenneth Berry, touchdowns attendance. Commissioner, at Big 12 Media Day and Mountain West Media Day, both commissioners talked about how they wanted to have a bigger imprint, a bigger footprint in Vegas and Los Angeles, not just with, games and scheduling and what's going to be on, TV, but mostly like a lot of flagship events. So obviously you just talked about how Big Ten Championship is going to stay here for the next 4 years. What's the plan, if any, in regards to having more events on the West Coast, LA and Vegas in particular?
Great, thank you. So what I'll say is, given the footprint of the conference, the cities that are now interested in hosting Big Ten champions has clearly expanded. And I think it's, we're really comfortable with the decision to stay in football here in Indianapolis for the next 4 seasons. We think it's the right thing to do. Having said that, I think you're going to see us begin to expand. I think it's really important to make sure that, markets around the country get to experience Big Ten championships. It's a really good way to connect the conference. So I think over time you'll start to see, the geographic footprint expand, keeping in mind competitive issues. Obviously, after our championships, teams go into the NCAA tournaments and championships as well. So keeping all of that in mind. But I think you can fully expect that over time you'll see the footprint of how we host championships change and grow.
Yes, Commissioner Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports and Bucknuts from Columbus. Last year you were kind of put in an untenable position there mid-season, having to make a ruling on situation involving Michigan football. Just 9 months down the line, if you could reflect back on how that situation unfolded, how difficult that was, who you relied upon with that, and then also if you can provide any insight as to when or if to expect anything from the NCAA on that.
Thank you. I'll take the second part first. I don't know of a timetable. I'm not aware yet about when the NCAA will come to any final determination, whatever that might be. But as to the first part, I can tell you that, it was a collaborative process inside the conference office with staff first, trying to understand, gather information. There was a lot of cooperation with the NCAA in terms of the information that we had access to, working with our administrators and ultimately our presidents and chancellors as well. So it was a completely collaborative process. Look, I understand having come from MLB and watching some of the discipline things that happen there, it's a difficult process when you're, forced with a situation where you have to decide what to do with a member, and that's part of it. You go into that with a lot of respect and trying to understand and do what's fair and protect the entire conference, and that was the approach we took, and I stand by the results of the decision we made.
Hi, Tony. Scott Docterman with The Athletic. I wanted to ask you about specifically expansion. What do you feel like these 4 schools bring this league to enrich this league? And my second question would be, expansion seems to be a relevant topic nationally, even now. What's the Big Ten's position currently on expansion when we see some turmoil that's happening within the ACC currently?
Yeah, so the first question, I would say, I think it's pretty clear when you look at the schedule that we've talked about unveiling here about the strength and depth of what we're doing. I think the fit of the 4 is across, obviously we're here to talk about football. When you go beyond that, for our presidents and chancellors, the academic fit is really important. If you look at the strength in all other sports that the 4 new members bring. So it's a complete match across many different factors. That's what made the decision to add Oregon, Washington, which was done by my staff, and then the decision that Kevin Warren and his staff did to add USC, UCLA. So I see great strength across matchups. The footprint that we'll have going forward. I think we've got to get a lot of things right, but I feel really good about the way we're positioned for the future in terms of the health and strength of the conference. With regard to the second part of your question about just the future, look, we're focused on the 18 right now. That's what we're focused on. We had to do a lot of work. A lot of work had been done to integrate USC, UCLA. We started that work over immediately when we added Oregon and Washington. So I think we're really comfortable where we are. We've got to get this conference right, and that's what our focus is.
Good morning, Commissioner. Todd Sadowski with Fox 43 Sports. You had mentioned Fox Sports is starting a Friday night schedule. Typically, this is a night that colleges have stayed away from and given to high school sports, but it seems this is a commitment long-term to Friday nights. What are the benefits to having the college games on Friday night and any potential hurdles that you might see? Yeah,
I think part of if you look at our footprint on Saturday, having the 3 broadcast partners supported by the cable presence and Big Ten Network, I think Friday's an opportunity for national exposure. So I think you're going to see some programs there really embrace the opportunity to play on Friday. Of course, we don't want to burden any one institution. We care about what happens at the stadium as well and what happens on campus. But if you look at it, it's an opportunity to get programs to showcase them as they build and in matchups. And so I think, for us to have that footprint is really terrific. I think on the hurdle side, look, there are just traditional places that want to play more on Saturday. We understand and respect that. It's a league discussion that involves all 18 about the best way to format our schedule, where coaches are embracing opportunities to have that exposure on Friday night. We try to lean into that. And so that's the way we approach it. Where are we more likely to go? That'll change over time. But I think collectively we all understand that we're doing this together, and we've got to make every telecast opportunity work for the conference to be as strong and healthy as we can.
Dustin Schutte, Sports Illustrated. This is the first time since 2019 there are no Big Ten conference games in Week 1. Are you guys moving away from that, or was that just how the schedule shook out this year?
I think it's the way the schedule shook out. I think there's a lot going on. We obviously play 9 conference games. We're trying to balance that. I think Kerry Kenny and our team have done a really remarkable job of coming up with a schedule that takes in so many factors. Obviously the non-conference schedule, the competitive balance, travel, getting through the season. But I think the core of what we do is that we are in the grind of conference football in November, and that's like the primary piece. I'm more concerned about that run to the end of the season than necessarily conference game is the first or second week.
Hey, Tony. Luke Evans, Orange County Register. I'm curious, you mentioned the House settlement and the effect that's going to have. Just what broad range on the schools in this conference do you see the decision-making they're having on the role of collectives in the NIL space, and particularly when you talk about revenue sharing as well? Is there any sort of plan or discussion around kind of a conference-wide plan for that for member schools?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in the House settlement. We expect it to be filed hopefully this week, and then go through the process with Judge Wilkin to get it to a final position sometime, we're hoping, the next several months. But that new model is going to require a lot of changes in terms of how we operate, you now have a situation where schools can provide benefits directly to student athletes. If there's a cap on that system, we've got to monitor what schools are spending, so you need a reporting system there that doesn't exist. We need a process to evaluate true NIL deals. We want student athletes to be able to take advantage of their name and likeness. We need to make sure that that's what's really happening. And look, the role of third parties, to the extent that third parties can connect student athletes to real NIL opportunities, that's a great thing. And I think that's the priority. So, in this new model, student athletes will have sort of three areas that they can take advantage of. They'll still retain their scholarships, the academic benefits, the connection to academics, that's vitally important. They'll be able to receive direct compensation, from their institutions. And third, they'll be able to capitalize on NIL to the extent that their NIL rights have value either locally or nationally. But we've got to build that model, and that's going to require change and a tremendous amount of collaboration. First of all, coming into a consensus within the Big Ten, but then, bringing that to our colleagues across the other conferences. All of those things need to happen together. And I think, the commissioners are committed to doing that. So a lot of work ahead over the next, several months. But a lot of decisions will be made locally. This system is built to allow institutions to make individual decisions about what programs they want to support, how much they want to invest, what student athletes get what, how many scholarships they offer, because we're eliminating scholarship limits. All of those decisions will be made institution by institution, and I think that's the right way to do it.
Tony, Adam Rittenberg with ESPN. This first time since 2015, the Big Ten's defending a national title, adding a team that played for one last year in Washington. Oregon did as well. As the playoff expands, what will constitute a successful season year to year in this league, in your view? Yeah,
the first thing I'll say is when I think about the postseason, I always start with the regular season. I want the regular season to have as many games as late as possible that are impactful. So we want as many teams competing as late in the season to earn a spot in the playoff. And I think that's the goal. I think if you think about the way postseasons work, they work in tandem with regular seasons. And so what I'm excited about is that the fact that we've expanded the playoff gives more teams in the Big Ten the opportunity to compete later in the season. That's better on site, on campus, in terms of the excitement. It brings more programs into the hunt. And that's what fans want. Fans want their teams to be alive as late as possible. That's all you can hope for. And I think this format will allow us to do it. We'll see how it operates this year. I've been pretty outspoken about the fact that we really want that regular season to work and connect to our postseason. It's to get through a Big Ten regular season is not easy. And, being able to earn that based on your conference play and your record, I think is a really critical part of what the playoffs should be.
Tony. Hey, Tony. Pete Nako's over at On3. How you doing? Wanted to ask you about roster limits. They keep being talked about in this House settlement. Do you expect that number to be at 105? And it's been reported that the Big Ten was hoping it'd be on the larger end of the spectrum.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to point to a specific number right now. I think we're close to coming to consensus with all the conferences. I'm not going to argue. I think, we were maybe on the higher end. The reporting has been accurate about that. And I think, ultimately, the goal is to come to something. I think we're doing something for the first time, right? We're going into a season where the season's going to be longer. The playoff is expanded. There's more games, and we're making decisions, and we're sort of going to have to see how it plays out. But I think we've been comfortable with the conversations. I will say in the process, because it's all sports, not just football, there's been a lot of great give and take among the commissioners. This is a really interesting balance that affects campuses differently. So, the way we approached it was to try to bring consensus from our coaching groups, our administrators, and then bring that conversation to our colleagues across the conferences. But I think that it's been a really good process, actually, with my colleagues. Thank you.
Hey, Tony. Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Podcast Network. You talked about the 4 former Pac-12 schools and what they bring to the conference and why they're such a good fit. When you're looking at membership moves like that, is there a primary factor that you and the presidents look at as, making a school or a university desirable to add?
I think it's a holistic approach that starts with academics, and the fit. That's a really big part of the legacy and the history of the Big Ten, so that's important to our leadership. Obviously, these 4 schools check those boxes very well. I think, the next factor is, being strong in multiple sports is important. And obviously, the test of, really being additive in football is critical. Like, are you bringing additional value to the conference on football? There's no secret that, football is a large part of the revenue that's driven to support the whole ecosystem. We understand that. And so when you're evaluating potential members, football sort of moves to the front of the line in terms of the athletic piece.
One more, Tony.
Hey, Tony. Andy Yamashita, Seattle Times. Washington had to take out some loans against future earnings as full Big Ten members to make its budget work this year. How did that agreement come about with the Big Ten? And from your guys' perspective, why was that important and how did it come together?
Yeah, I'm not going to address. I don't have enough detail on this in the structure they've had to finance what they need to do there locally. I will say we've been supportive in understanding what they may need to make a transition. I think this was about a long-term home, and there might be some short-term things that have to be done to get them on the right footing to start. But I think they and we feel really good about the arc of where the conference is and what we can expect to deliver over time.
Commissioner Pettiti, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.